So last summer, my brother Jesse gave me a call. He was like, "This is just too weird for you to miss. I talked to the captain. You can come spend a couple of days on the boat." And I first met the boat at an industrial tugboat dock outside of Baltimore Harbor. And it was not your traditional boat. It's a 90-foot twin-masted tall ship named the Amara Z, and it hosts the 20 members of the Caravan Stage Company. My brother and everybody else were halfway through a 6-month tour up the East Coast, performing their original opera, Hacked, The Treasure of the Empire. What they would do is they would sail from town to town, and they would dock, and then they would transform the boat into a working theater, including 2 stages, the deck and one was 70 feet off the deck. They had puppets, aerialists, video projections, zip lines, lights, the whole bit, and this crazy set that included both a mini roller coaster and a giant Scales of Justice. And then they would perform their highly political and barely comprehensible opera for whoever would show up on the docks. So when I first step onto the boat, my brother gives me the 4 most important rules. No whistling, because it's superstition. No cutting your nails, because the roaches love those. Pee into the bucket, because the toilet never works. And always listen to the captain, because he's the captain. Though he was more than that. Paul was a 70-year-old Canadian who didn't believe in possessions or marriage, and he and his partner had been leading traveling theater groups for decades. But he was also the writer and director of the show, which meant he kind of created this fantasy world aboard the boat, and you just had to live by his rules, which is how you kind of find yourself performing opera to tiny, disinterested crowds on rural docks. So we leave the Baltimore Harbor, headed for the Chesapeake, and Paul comes up and he's like, "Andre, right? You're with Jesse on Green Watch." Green Watch was one of the 3 work crews that rotated operating the boat, steering, navigating, whatnot. And 2.5 hours into our shift, the sky turns gray, this cold wind blows across the boat. Paul comes up again, he's like, "Andre, Jesse, put on some life jackets, clear anything from the deck that might blow off." Mind you, an entire theater worth of gear, 6 bikes, and a 15-foot seahorse are strapped to the deck. But we run around gathering teacups and pieces of clothing and whatnot and come back to the stern. And that's when I look off the back of the boat and see this black tendril coming out of the cloud and touching the water. And I've been on board with this trip so far, and I can deal with some rain, but that is a water spout, and it is coming towards the boat, and this boat tops out at 6 knots, which is slower than you can run. But I don't have much time to worry about the water spout, because the rain starts pounding the boat, and the lightning starts hitting the water all around us. That's when Paul shows up again. He's like, "Andre, Jesse, you're on bow watch." Bow watch is when you go sit on 2 little chairs way at the front of the boat and use binoculars to look for obstacles. Given the water and electricity falling from the sky, bow watch is not where I want to go. But captain's orders, so we go. And then out of the mass of gray in front of us emerges this school of fish. School of dead, floating, electrified fish from the lightning strikes around us. As they pass on the other side of the boat, I turn to my brother and goes, "This is insane." He's like, "Yeah, and we do theater. The guy steering the boat is the sound designer." And we're both about to have a big old laugh about how funny it is to have actors, operating a gigantic boat. And then I see out of the corner of my eye a flash of lightning and instantly hear this raw, ripping noise coming from inside my eardrums, followed immediately by the loudest crash of thunder I've ever heard. And immediately the walkie-talkie goes, "Bow watch retreat," and we run back to the stern. I don't know if the lightning hit the boat or not, but it could not have been any closer. Down below, though, the crew is still talking about the water spout, but it's not really a big deal because 3 days ago they sailed through a hurricane, so this particular life-threatening event is not new to them. But the next day, Paul announces at the cast meeting that we're going to have our next performance in Bivalve, New Jersey. And everyone is nods, goes back to work, because they've been to a bunch of towns they don't recognize. But this is my first town, so I Google Bivalve. And what I find is not good. According to Wikipedia, Bivalve is a ghost town since the oyster beds dried up in the 1950s. The town next door is called Shell Pile because it is literally a pile of shells from decades of oyster fishing. And I look up from my phone reading this, and the cast members around me are kind of mildly interested, but not very worried, as if an abandoned oyster town is the perfect place to perform their avant-garde opera. But as we approach, kind of everybody comes up from the bunks and onto the bow to see the town. And there's this big white industrial building and a little line of docks on the shore. And we're all looking, and then this flock of seagulls raises off a 200-foot long pile of shells. And that's when the wave of rotting air slams into the boat, and we all just yell out involuntarily. Turns out Bivalve is mostly a ghost town. They still have a clam plant, and which means the town permanently smells of all the little bits of rotting flesh on the shells, and they throw them outside. And so we dock at this tiny museum, and we get out to stare at this sad, depressing, falling down speck of a hamlet. Outside of the clam plant and this museum, there is one house, and we're at the end of the road, and everyone is much more chill than I am. I don't know what the hell we're doing here. Who are we possibly going to perform for, and how did Paul choose Bivalve? But again, captain's orders, and they are just following captain's orders, so that's why we're here. And then the old guy with a dog and a young family with a baby, which is the entire town, comes out to greet the boats. But then the young family gives us this cooler of beautiful soft-shell crabs for us to eat, and offers to let us do laundry in their house. And the museum has one shower and Wi-Fi. And the old guy buys us pizza and offers to make a booze run. He's like, yeah, I was here when y'all came through last time, but I live across the river. And Paul turns to the cast and goes, so last time we came through, the town across the river didn't like the show so much, they kicked us out and banned us from ever coming back. They even called towns up the coast to warn them about us. And the old guy goes, fuck them. And Paul laughs and shakes his hand and thanks for welcoming us. And I gotta say, I agree with the old guy. Fuck him. At least this nothing depressing town is into hosting weird actors playing sailors. And as the pizza gonna mask the rotting clam smell and we drink on the docks, my faith is restored in Captain Paul. He knew where we were going and how to take us there. Thanks.